Okay, we're into an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Seiko. A little about them. They were founded back in 1881. They are Japanese in origin and now factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end. And in terms of the type of watch, I'd consider this an everyday watch. And really, what you're looking for when you want something you can wear every day, you're just going to want that versatile blend of both sporty and dressy attributes. This is the JDM Presage model SARX035. And this is actually one of the original baby Grand Seiko models from years back, and I actually got this one in on loan from Belmont Watches, and you guys can actually buy this particular unit from them for $750, which is, I think, a pretty outstanding deal. It has a very high level of finish, and of course that grammar of design. When you think about Seiko, Grand Seiko, there's so much that's here. And in terms of it being very, very competitive, it absolutely is, especially when you consider how in-house everything is. And this is one of the few models where it really just has a lot of versatile crossover appeal. You get the black dial, you have the black date disc with the white numeral there, just all very, very clean, very, very crisp, and very signature to the brand. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, so some of you are thinking, SARX, that sounds familiar. Yes, the SARX JDM watches have been really nice watches within their collection, and if you guys search SARX on my channel, you'll find quite a few different variations popping up. This is one of the ones that I actually never had. Closest thing I had was my SARX055, which would be that kind of baby snowflake, but that was titanium. But it's definitely very similar in a lot of ways to this particular line, but this one being steel, and I think definitely more versatile with that nice, really luscious black dial there. It's sunray and glossy. A lot of times you'll see sunray dials kind of covered up by a matte finish here. Look at how deep and glossy that black is. So very, very nice, very clean. Now the diameter on here normally is measured around, I think, 40.8. I measured on my calipers about 41 millimeters. You know, depending on where you measure from, I would consider this a 41 millimeter watch. Although, of course, I think it wears very nice for a 41. Some people are like, hey, 41's my number. But for me, you know, I'm typically more in kind of the realm of a 38.5 for a watch like this. But I will say Seiko uses all of the tricks in their playbook to really make this one wear pretty outstanding. So actually, let me give it a quick wipe here off camera. Of course, this is a, you know, this is a pre-owned model, right? So it's got some wear and tear, but you'll also notice that, you know, Seiko's Dia Shield super hard coating definitely has helped over the years, help everything hold up. Look at that case work. I mean, you just don't find that anywhere else at this price. Oh, of course I wipe off the case and I ended up getting a bunch of lint on the dial. Not on the dial, but on the crystal. So we'll keep that nice and clean. All right, back to it. Now, the thinness here is only actually 11.6 millimeters thick, and I think it wears that height really well. You also get a signed crown, signature to, of course, to Presage watches, and you can see the beautiful bevels and undercuts there all just kind of come together. Very complex, even if you look at just the ends of the lugs there. There's just a lot that's going on, and again, at this price point, $750, it's tough to find something, especially something original. Now, at this point, there are, you know, a lot of even homage Grand Seiko watches that are out there for very cheap. But now this is actually, you know, intrinsic to Seiko's design language. It's a Seiko that looks like a Seiko. So when it comes to something that's going to have, you know, the level of casework here, it's going to be tough to find something at this price point that isn't just mimicking Seiko's look. So I think that's pretty cool that, you know, under $1,000 you can get something that screams and shouts, you know, Seiko's design language that is actually a Seiko, right? So that's cool. Also, of course, you get the JDM appeal there, that Japanese domestic market, you know, kind of limited factor there, which is nice. Now, The crown is just a push-pull. The movement inside is actually the 6R15D, so you're going to get 50 hours of power reserve and 3 hertz sweep there. So you can consider that as 21,600 vibrations per hour in terms of that beat rate. So still a lower beat rate, but you know, it does the job. You guys can see here it's sweeping quite beautifully. And you know what? I still have just a bit of lint on the crystal, so if I can just, you notice it more when it's a black dial. So it's, you know, I want to make sure I'm showing you guys just how crispy this thing is in terms of that handset, that dial, the indices on there. It's pretty immaculate. Now, of course, getting to those dial details, you have applied indices that are really beautifully polished, and they even do have some micro finishings on it just to make it grab and reflect light in a really unique way. So very tough to capture that here, but I'll do my best. Now, this dial is, of course, gloss black sunray dial. You do have the framed date window, which looks very nice. And, of course, you have the color-matched wheel, which is fantastic. You have dual finished hands, which really help for readability. So you're going to get one side's going to be satin blasted and the other side's going to be high polished. And the nice thing is, depending on how the light hits, you're always pretty much going to have something that's legible because of the frosted sections of the hands. Of course, the reflective section can reflect something dark, right? Like right now, it's reflecting off of a black camera lens, and you kind of miss that piece of the silhouette. But thanks to that dual finishing there, it doesn't matter the angle, you're still going to be getting nice views, and you're going to still have that ultimately be legible. Now, in terms of the water resistance, another plus for a Seiko, right, is 10 bar or 100 meters of water resistance. Of course, that is with the crown pushed in, and it is a push-pull. It's not a screw down, so you can't guarantee that the crown will be pushed in, but as long as it is pushed in, you'll be good to go. Now, the lugs here, another plus, 20 millimeter lugs. So you can put this on a beautiful strap if you would like, really dress things up. But everything here is very solid. You have solid links, solid end links, nice little taper from 20 millimeters down to about 17.8. You do have this kind of 3-link, or you could even consider it a 5-link style because of those outer portions there, you know, kind of squared off on the center links, and then a little bit more organic and rounded on the outer links. And you can see in the back, it's a bit of a trick there because these the outer links are actually connected, and then there's just a cap that goes over the middle that has the ends and then the center. So that's what keeps that delineation nice and clean in terms of the separation, and you do get the visual you know, appeal of having a multi-link setup while also kind of having you know, the sturdiness of, okay, hey, well, that's a shared link there, these two ends, and then this just kind of caps over. So I think that's very cool, and of course does help with cost saving as well. Now you can see actually this does come with 2 half links. They're not inserted right now. Of course, you know, this isn't my watch, so I'm not going to adjust it or anything like that, but this does use pin and collars. You can see nicely milled. And one of the really nice things that I think goes a little underappreciated is you have really nice contouring on the scissor section there, that folding section. So when that is up against your wrist, you can see they've just gone out of their way to make sure that those edges are nicely broken and contoured so it'll be nice and comfortable on your wrist. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this wears really well. Personally, I probably would have added a half link into the bracelet just to make it wear a little bit more to my liking, but I can get it to close, so why not show it? Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens, you're gonna get some perspective distortion and it's gonna appear much larger. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here so you guys can still get a detailed look, but maybe just keeping a true aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And although I do have a larger sized 7.5-inch wrist, I will say that of course you can see see here, it's quite tall. So it's a round wrist. It's not a big flat kind of wide one that's just going to accommodate to every watch. So even though I have a larger wrist, you might be seeing this watch and think, oh, that looks a little bit larger than I would prefer. I will say, even with a smaller wrist, across the top of my wrist is actually not that wide. So you might still enjoy this one depending on the profile of your wrist as well. But I think this looks absolutely great. It has a wonderful amount of play, and the reason why I consider this an everyday watch instead of an everyday dress watch, a lot of that has to do with the scale, right, at about 41 millimeters. And again, guys, you can buy Rolex Datejusts at 41 millimeters, right? So it's not unheard of to have a dressy watch at this size. And I think this is where this watch lives. I mean, if it was a little bit smaller, I think you would lose a lot of those details, a lot of that charm as well. But again, I'm somebody like my King Seiko, which is a lot more expensive than this, multiples, right? It's like over $3,000. To find something that's comparable is going to be very, very expensive. So I think that's where you kind of get a nice little trade-off there, where you can see those facets, those undercuts. It just lays on the wrist really beautifully. And this is something that would really compete very well against something, let's say from their Swiss competitors. Something like a Carrera or something you're going to wear every day. Not the chronograph, but just like the regular three-hander, right? Like something like this absolutely stands up, and it holds its own against a lot of the other options that are out there, whether they be from Tag or Longines. I think that this Seiko really, within this space, this is a real powerhouse, guys. Again, look at that dial. Absolutely beautiful. But with that said, let's actually get it off the wrist. And now, although there is no lume, we can go ahead and get some low light transition and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, and like I mentioned before, no lume, so no reason to pitch this all the way dark. But one thing I always like to work in is a bit of a low light transition. And you guys can see, look at those indices just grabbing what little light there is, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying the direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. Maybe include a bit of harsh lighting, which typically could expose any types of production defects, but all you're going to see here is, of course, a bit of wear and tear, that natural wabi-sabi in terms of some personality within that bracelet and on that case. But that dial plays just beautifully, guys. And again, this isn't a dedicated sports watch, right? This is somewhere in that kind of everyday, but leaning towards dressy, especially without any lume side. But man, that is just handsome. Whew. I know it's not for everybody, but I mean, this is the type of watch. The funny enough thing is, these are the majority of Grand Seikos are these types of watches. Slightly larger, dressy, but built sportier with extra water resistance, little extra size, metal bracelets, right? Like this is what they do best. And then of course having that really sharply done dial, handset, everything just done to those really, really high levels in terms of those fine details. So for me, guys, closing thoughts on the wrist, this wears really well. Not oversized, but still with plenty of wrist presence. Again, it does wear on the larger side because it is a larger watch at about 41 millimeters, but it doesn't wear oversized. That's the one thing I want to make very sure with you guys. This is a really well proportioned watch, and the scale, even if it isn't to your liking, it's just going to come together really well on the wrist. And there's a reason why these were so popular during their heyday, and you rarely see these pop up now on the aftermarket. It's just because so many people kind of kept these, and they have a lot of sentimental trappings tied to them. This was kind of the premium SARB replacement, right? It was a little bit larger, but it had a lot of that crossover appeal, and of course it stepped everything up in terms of quality for the bracelet, for the case complexity, for the dial. So very, very impressive. In terms of model variants, there was also a white dial with blue hand variation, which was the SARX033, which would be the sister watch to this one, directly comparable. You know, it's just a different color scheme. And then there was a bunch of other watches that, you know, came close with, you know, a couple variations, but no reason to kind of dig into those within the back catalog. Now, in terms of comparable models, guys, again, this is kind of in between King Seiko and SARB, right? So think of this as kind of Sharp Edge before the Sharp Edge series came out. So I think that is a good comparable, except you're going to get this for, you know, nice little deal compared to a Sharp Edge watch. And I will say that the case shape and contours here versus the Sharp Edge do feel a little bit more intrinsic to Seiko. So for me, guys, bottom line, they're, you know, the higher end finishing and design, the Seiko in-house attributes, the great proportions with a sleek silhouette that really exude a sense of luxury that's rarely found, you know, under $2,000. There's a lot to like here, and there's a reason why these were, you know, again, such popular watches for their day. This was like a go-to. This was one of the watches that people aspired for as their kind of reverse grail, you know, in terms of it being something that you could afford, and it quenched the thirst for a lot of people that you know, maybe didn't want to save up to snag a Grand Seiko, especially before Grand Seiko was really mainstream here in the US. So with that said, let me know what you guys all think down in the comments below. Big shout out again to Belmont Watches. Definitely check the link down in the description if you are interested in this timepiece. So if you like the video, please do a like, and if you have any, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.